From Manila to the globe, this is World Newsfeed, bringing you the biggest stories shaping our times. Good morning, I'm Raine Musñgi. Let's dive into the headlines making an impact across the world. We begin in the United States as the Capitol goes on high alert with just 2 days to go before the presidential election. Additional security forces are now guarding the White House and the official residence of the vice president. More barricades have also been put up.
About the election itself, I'm excited. I'm very confident of who I'm going to be voting for, and I think it's a great moment for our country. And for the world, a free, fair election, peaceful transition. However it comes, I think that's how it should be, and I'm very confident it will be.
The election is widely expected to go down the wire, with Democratic Vice President Kamala Harris and her Republican rival Donald Trump still neck and neck in opinion polls. Well, early voting has wrapped up in Florida, and nearly 8 million, or more than half of the state's registered voters, turned out. So far, Republicans are heavily dominating early voting in Florida, where Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence is located.
We have 2 days to the election. 2 days to the election, and Trump's going to win this. We might have a fight before it's over, but I'm not worried because we are going to prevail. Because you know why? God has us, and every part of this is going to be biblical. Period. It's going to be biblical.
Millions have also cast their ballots in early voting in Ohio. Ohio officials say 2.3 million residents already voted, and thousands are still turning out on the last day.
We feel good about it. There's a lot of people coming out to vote. That's exciting. I think on the last day of early voting, people expect to see a line, and I think most people you'll find are very pleasant, very happy. People are ready to vote, so I think our voters, they know what to expect, so they're ready, and they're ready for it.
A political analyst believes Donald Trump will not accept defeat and will put out all the stops to prevent that outcome. Paul Beck says Trump did that before, and he'll probably do it again. Trump has repeatedly claimed his 2020 loss to President Joe Biden was a result of widespread fraud in states that he lost. Beck also says the November 5 voting will be a choice between the status quo and radical changes in the U.S.
Just because things are so close in 2024, and it's so hard to predict what's going to happen should Trump lose. If he wins, I think we know what is going to happen. He has said it himself, and it's going to be a really tumultuous 4 years in the United States, particularly if he has control of the Senate. And if he has control of the House, he will have what we call a trifecta, where all three branches of the federal government are in Republican control. And even for that, there would almost be nothing that could prevent him from doing what he wants to do.
Go out and vote. That's the message of Vice President Kamala Harris as Election Day looms. Harris says she herself had already filled out and sent her mail ballot.
Hey everyone, Election Day is Tuesday, November 5th. And yes, this race is going to be tight, but we are going to win. And one of the reasons why is you're going to vote. I know you are. So make sure you fill out your ballot. I did mine. I'm going to put it in the mail. And we are going to make sure that we fight together for the promise of America. And if you haven't yet, please make a plan to vote. Figure out where you're going to vote, when you're going to vote, and go to iwillvote.com if you have any questions about your polling place or your registration status. I'll see you out there, and thank you.
As for Donald Trump, he made a last pitch for support in Pennsylvania, the largest of the 7 states expected to decide this tight race for the White House. There, Trump repeatedly criticized the U.S. election process and the early voting system. He said the results should be determined by the end of Election Day.
Can you imagine? They spend all this money on machines, and they're going to say, we may take an extra 12 days to determine. And what do you think happens during that 12 days? What do you think happens? These elections have to be decided by 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock on Tuesday night. Bunch of crooked people. These are crooked people.
A Reuters poll shows most voters view both candidates unfavorably, but this has not dissuaded them so far from casting their ballots. Up next on World Newsfeed, we'll take a closer look at the rivals in the tight U.S. presidential race on Insight Weekly. Keep it here on BNC. And we're back. You're still watching World Newsfeed. Despite legal woes, former President U.S. Donald Trump is determined to return to the Oval Office. From billionaire to political powerhouse, our foreign affairs editor, Jamela Alindogan, gives us a closer look at the Republican presidential nominee on Insight Weekly.
Former President Donald Trump, one of the most controversial and consequential figures in U.S. history, is on the cusp of a potential second term. In Asia, his policies are seen as inconsistent and erratic, leaving many here uncertain about the region's future under his second term. I'm Jamela Alindogan, and this is Insight Weekly.
We will make America great again.
Donald Trump's life has been defined by ambition, controversy, and spectacle. To some, he embodies the American dream. To others, he represents unchecked privilege and abuse of power. The fourth child of New York real estate mogul Fred Trump, Donald was born into wealth. His personal life has been a public spectacle. 3 marriages, tabloid scandals, and a string of sexual misconduct allegations. Court rulings have since awarded millions in defamation damages. Trump's career has been driven by relentless ambition. But his famous show The Apprentice and his "You're fired" catchphrase made him a household name.
Kamala, you're fired. Get out of here.
Although his business image wasn't flawless, bankruptcies and tax filings exposed years of chronic losses. Trump entered the 2015 presidential race, rallying his base with a call to restore the so-called American dream and secure U.S. borders. Under Make America Great Again, he trounced his way through the Republican primary and eventually defeated Hillary Clinton.
The President of the United States.
His presidency was transformative yet divisive, marked by tax cuts, strict immigration policies, a trade war with China, and the U.S. withdrawal from key global agreements. The end of his presidency brought chaos. After his 2020 loss, Trump declared election fraud, igniting a January 6 rally that erupted into the Capitol riot. A day that led to his second impeachment. Despite that, his grip over the Republican Party grew. And at 78, Trump is back, leading the campaign trail while facing 91 felony charges, from election interference to fraud. Despite these challenges, his monumentum has not slowed. An assassination attempt at a Pennsylvania rally only deepened his base's fervor. Trump's ambitious Project 2025 outlines sweeping changes from immigration to federal authority. He proposed to bringing the entire federal bureaucracy, independent agencies like the Department of Justice, under presidential control.
And we will put these vicious and bloodthirsty criminals in jail, or we'll kick them the hell out of our country as fast as we can.
Critics argue that this 900-page blueprint reads like a conservative manifesto, offering the next Republican president expanded executive powers and embedding a hardline social agenda across the United States. He has since distanced himself from it, but experts say it offers a snapshot of what the United States could look like under a second Trump presidency. The question in the meantime is how Southeast Asian countries can manage a potentially unreliable and transactional American administration. Southeast Asia's long tradition of hedging between China and the United States may soon face its ultimate challenge. I'm Jamela Alindogan, and this is Insight Weekly.
Well, Trump rival Kamala Harris, on the other hand, aims to make history in her White House run. If she wins, she becomes the first woman and Asian American to lead the most powerful nation on earth. Jamela Alindogan returns.
U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris is no stranger to power. But despite being next in line for the presidency, she's still working to connect with the American people just days before election. I'm Jamela Alindogan, and in this episode of Insight Weekly, we'll talk about her rise as she stands on the brink of a landmark victory.
We are all here because we are fighting for a democracy and for the right of people.
Vice President Kamala Harris is no stranger to power. Yet, with just weeks before Election Day, she's working tirelessly to connect with the American public and make her case for the presidency. In 2021, Kamala Harris made history as the first woman, Black American, and South Asian American to be sworn in as vice president. Born in 1964 to a Jamaican father and an Indian mother, Harris often speaks about how her parents' immigrant journeys in the U.S. shaped her early life and instilled in her a commitment to justice.
Fighting for the best of who we are.
Harris began her legal career in 1990, prosecuting child sexual assault cases, a work she describes as foundational for her future in public service. In 2004, she became San Francisco's district attorney, breaking new ground by officiating the city's first same-sex marriage. Elected as California's Attorney General in 2010, she led the nation's largest state justice department, cementing her role as a trailblazer. In 2022, Harris made a historic visit to the Philippines, traveling to Palawan to meet with residents and Coast Guard officials. Her visit, as the highest-ranking U.S. official to step foot in the region, sent a strong message of the U.S.'s commitment to the Philippines and firm support for South China Sea defense. Her connection to the Philippines extended further. Her husband, Douglas Emhoff, represented the U.S. at President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s inauguration, carrying a personal message from President Biden and pledging continued support to combat COVID-19. When President Joe Biden stepped aside in the presidential race, Harris swiftly accepted his endorsement and declared her candidacy.
I accept your nomination to be President of the United States of America.
As she secured the Democratic nomination, her promises echoed Biden's core policies, upholding democratic values and the rule of law, restoring abortion rights, urgently addressing climate change, and pushing tax reforms that favor the middle class. The first few months of her campaign were marked by fierce debates, where Harris held her ground. Yet, as the economy emerged as a top concern, she began pivoting her message, framing Trump as a grave threat to democracy and sharpening the ideological divide. She intensified her tone, calling Trump a fascist and urging voters to turn the page on a divisive era in American politics.
Donald Trump is even more unstable and more unhinged, and now he wants unchecked power. And this time, there will be no one there to stop him.
In recent months, Harris has focused on reaching undecided voters and moderate Republicans. though she has often sidestepped specific policy details on border security, healthcare, and the Gaza conflict. Her rhetoric, however, has remained strong, casting Trump as an existential threat to democracy.
The Constitution of the United States should never again stand behind the seal of the President of the United States of America. Never again.
If elected, Harris faces an agenda packed with domestic and international challenges. From border security and the Ukraine crisis to tensions over Taiwan, Israel, and Gaza. And in Southeast Asia, another question looms: how Harris will navigate complex alliances, building closer ties with regional partners while managing the delicate balance with China.
Do we believe in freedom?
With a tight race and the world watching, Kamala Harris stands poised to make history once again, carrying the weight of a deeply divided America and a fractured world on her shoulders.
And when we fight, we win!
If she wins, Harris will become the first female president in U.S. history. But she will be also facing the enormous task of uniting a deeply polarized society. I'm Jamela Alindogan, and this is Inside Weekly.
Coming up, the death toll in Spain's worst flooding in modern history, now at 217. World Newsfeed will be right back. Stay with us here on BNC. And we're back. You're still watching World Newsfeed. Anger boiling over in Spain following the country's worst flooding in modern history. And the king and queen are feeling the outrage when they visited one of the worst hit towns in the eastern region of Valencia. Protesters hurled mud at the royal couple, with some even calling them murderers. Despite the incident, the king and queen remained calm and insisted on speaking with the flood victims. Still in Spain, football matches across the country took a moment of silence before kickoff to pay respects to the victims of the devastating floods in Valencia. No games are scheduled to be played in Valencia, where more than 200 have died and dozens remain missing. Thousands of troops are involved in the search and rescue operations, but officials admit hopes of finding survivors are fading. The United Nations Nature Summit ends in a deadlock as developing and developed nations remain divided on who should foot the bill for conservation efforts. The summit aimed to secure a massive $200 billion fund to help developing countries restore habitats and protect endangered species. But developing nations argued they cannot shoulder the burden alone. The future of global biodiversity funding now in limbo, leaving crucial environmental initiatives at risk. But there is a silver lining at the summit as delegates approved a measure to create a permanent body for indigenous peoples to consult on UN decisions about conservation.
Que abarcan gran parte de la riqueza natural del planeta.
Our territories, which cover much of the natural wealth of the planet, have also been home to people of African descent and indigenous peoples whose sustainable practices are needed to face the environmental challenges that we all share today. This step allows us to move forward to an implementation of the convention that will truly reflect the diversity of the peoples and their knowledge at a global context.
Heading to Japan now, where researchers have built the world's first wooden satellite. It is set to be launched to space on Tuesday in an early test for using timber in lunar and Mars exploration. Here's the full story.
It might just make space exploration a little more sustainable. Scientists in Japan are set to test the world's first wooden satellite. The LignoSat was developed by a team from Kyoto University and home builder Sumitomo Forestry. It will be launched next week atop a SpaceX rocket bound for the International Space Station. Former Japanese space shuttle astronaut Takao Doi was part of the Kyoto team.
If we can use materials that humans can make and bring them to outer space, people will be able to create a sustainable society. Therefore, we want to find out if wood can be used in space or not, and that's why we made this wooden satellite.
LignoSat, named after the Latin word for wood, will be released from the space station in the coming weeks. It will orbit for 6 months, testing how well the material can withstand the extreme environment. Forest science professor Koji Murata says wood can actually perform well in space, as there's nothing there to make it rot or catch fire.
The wood used for the satellite comes from a type of magnolia tree, Japanese hinoki. Traditionally, it is easy to process and resistant to shattering, which is why it is typically used for things like the scabbards of Japanese swords and the blades of Japanese wooden sandals due to its strength.
Wood also offers benefits at the end of the satellite's life, when it will burn up harmlessly in the Earth's atmosphere. Traditional satellites burn up too, but give off a shower of polluting metal particles when they do. Looking further ahead, Doi sees the satellite as a step towards a bigger dream. He wants to plant trees and build timber houses on the Moon and Mars.
That's all for now. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Raine Musñgi. Catch up with us again tomorrow when we bring you the world in 30 minutes only on World Newsfeed. Follow the Money comes next. Keep it here on BNC.